We've come to South Shields now to start the second half of our video, and this is the Up North Combine Winning Loft of Rod Adams. Good morning, Rod.
Morning, Keith.
It's a pleasure to meet you at long last.
Yes, it's mutual.
Congratulations on your recent combine win. Where was it from?
Well, it was from Bourges, the longest race in the Up North Combine. It's 571 miles, and it's a race I've been trying to win for some time now.
Yeah. What's one or two of your best performances?
I would think, I've concentrated on Bourges for a lot of years, and I would think out of Bourges, probably the best performance previous to this was a blue-pied hen who actually flew 10th and 12th combine on the night, and her sister flew 9th. And at the same time I had a blue hen who flew 9th and 10th, both on the night. And there isn't anything to beat a pigeon that's flown 15, 16 hours to get home.
Absolutely brilliant. You've had one or two federation wins from Bourges.
I think in the last 8 years I've had 5 first federations from Bourges.
Absolutely wonderful record.
And,
how long have you been in sport?
Well, I've kept pigeons since I was 10-year-old, but I've raced on my own since I was about 20. So I've kept birds. I'm 60 now. I've kept them 40 years.
Yeah.
Raised them 40 years.
What's the circumstances of starting up?
Well, I was fortunate enough to start off in an area where we had what we used to call a pudding club. We had a boys club, and we raced each other for our pocket money when we were about 15, 16-year-old, and then graduated through looking after other people's pigeons to flying on my own in 1959. And in 59 I was fortunate enough to fly behind a man who was a living legend in South Shields, a guy called Tommy Burke. And Tommy taught me how to race pigeons.
Yeah. Do you like short distance racing?
At that particular time, I couldn't win any races, so I got Tommy's pigeons, acquired Tommy's methods, and in the space of about 5 years I was winning inland averages, and by 1971 I was flying in partnership with a guy called Herbie Elliott, and in that season we had 16 firsts inland, but we couldn't time from the distance, so I decided there and then to get rid of the inland pins and concentrate on the distance.
Yeah, it gives you a right buzz when you get them from that sort of distance.
It's superb. I mean, the margins between winning and losing in inland races are very small, but good pigeons that are flying 14 and 15 hours don't grow on trees. When I first had a crack at this race, I actually flew a yearling hen at Bourges, bred from bird market pigeons, and she was timed in the second morning to be second club, and I thought this was easy racing, but I went 9 years before I got another one home from that race. This is a little hen that I won Bourges with, and she's a hen that's bred to do the job. She's bred from a full brother to the 2 good hens that I flew that were given to me by Alan Hindhoff. The mother of this hen is bred through Sonny Galloway's Combine Winner and a hen called Schoolmistress, and down through a hen of Herbie Elliott's that I called 2953, whose mother actually had 3 first feds at the channel, including a 9th Combine Melon. This little hen, when she was a year old, I told some Scottish fanciers I'd win the combine from Bourges with her, and in fact I call her Little Miss Bourges to make the point that she's small, that she's female, and Bourges is a long way away. When she was a yearling, I simply took her to Lille. I think I'll put her back in the box now. I simply took her to the Lille race, which is about 350 miles, and out of Lille she did no more than win on the day, but then come home on the day. But as a 2-year-old, the race that actually made this hen was the Greater Distance Club race. It's an organisation that we have in the north of England of about 50 fanciers who are devoted to long distance racing, and this little hen went to Sartilly, and I hadn't realised how far west Sartilly was, and it's about 436 miles to me, and in fact the winning pigeon took about 12 hours, and this little hen came at 17 minutes past 9 at night. I'd actually locked up, and I thought the race was finished, and she was the 6th bird home on the day, but she wasn't touched, and she'd learned from that experience. She'd gone up the wrong side of the country and rectified a mistake. I let her sit for a month, got her sitting on eggs 12 days, and sent her back to Bourges, which is 571 miles, and we got a very strange race. The birds were late, they were liberated very late, and in fact it really was a 2-day race, and she turned in the next morning at about 8:30 to be 30th Up North Combine. So this year I sent her to the equivalent of Sartilly, which is Pontezon, maybe 4 or 5 miles more, maybe 440 miles, with the Northern Classic, and she would have been about 33rd in the Northern Classic, but she was the only bird on the day in the Greater Distance Club, and I clocked this hen at 8 o'clock at night when I actually only had 3 birds back from Lille, which was 100 miles shorter, and she wasn't tired, so I lined her up for Bourges. The youngster she was on when she went was about 3 days old, so I ringed this youngster and left her. She sorted herself another box out, and naturally progressed, so she was sitting 12 days when she went back to Bourges. The youngster was still following her around. It was quite full grown.
Yeah.
It still sleeps on the box with her, and because I sent it to Bourges just before the race, just to remind her she was a racing pigeon. I gave her the equivalent of about 35 mile tosses, and in that month she'd literally had the open hole and no work. She chose to fly twice, but she's small and she holds her weight, and I sent her to Bourges fully pooled, and I fully expected the bird to come. It was a fastish race. She was doing about 1440, and I was actually putting the birds in the car for an inland race when she arrived, but I lost no time, and she really came well and didn't look distressed at all.
No, wonderful looking pigeon.
She's a beautiful little hen. She's evenly marked, and she's very calm. She has a nice temperament, and she's always been a bird that I've really fancied.
I suppose Rod's Loft is probably one of the most famous in the northeast of England. It's a loft down by the railway tracks. This wonderful old loft is L-shaped. It's made up of two 19-foot lofts. They're self-built with open door trapping. And Rod tells me it was all made of second-hand timber. The home of champions. What system you race your old birds on in, Rod?
Well, at present, I mean, it's totally natural. I've never flown widowhood, although I do fancy a go with a small team at 600 miles. But I normally pair the birds up. It's a hangover to the days when I was working. I normally pair the birds up the first week in March, and I keep about maybe 40 pairs of racers, 35, 40 pairs of racers, and these are all dedicated to 500-mile racing sooner or later. I'm not a heavy trainer. I give them enough training early in the season so I don't lose them, because the bird isn't born that can't be lost at 80 miles on a bad day. And I try to give them a selected number of races. The older birds that are going to, say, 500 miles will only get 3 races before 500 miles. Perhaps one at 80, perhaps one at 150. Then they go to Lille, which is 300 miles, then into Bourges, which is 570. The yearlings I tend to race on a more regular basis, and the yearlings have to go to 400 miles. Now, I'm fortunate enough to be able to get reasonable corn off the farms, off fancier friends, and I virtually hopper feed beans and peas off the farm with a decent commercial mixture, and as I get nearer the channel racing, I supplement the feed by about 30% in maize. Well, this blue cock actually has a bit of history in him. He happens to be paired to the combine winner from Bourges, and himself, as a 2-year-old, he topped the federation and was 36 combine from Bourges, and he went back the following year and flew it in race time, and this year, in fact, he was about my 3rd pigeon. He was 79th combine Bourges. But the interesting thing is, he is the cousin to the hen he's paired to. But both of his parents, he's the first bird I've ever had, both of his parents were federation winners from Bourges, and he is a federation winner from Bourges.
Yeah. This is a scene inside Rod's natural section. A nice happy environment. He informs me the deep litter on the floor is 10 years of age. The pigeons certainly look contented. What families of pigeons you racing, Rod?
Well, just now they're an amalgamation of a lot of birds, mainly obtained within the Up North Combine. And when I first started off and decided I was going to fly to Channel, I basically went to the established channelmen in my own area: Tom Kilner, Billy Napper, Billy Gibbons, Sonny Galloway, Aidan Marshall, well-established men. And I used these birds as a base and turned out some pretty good performances over the years at the distance with them, crossed in with, say, Herbie Elliott's and 1 or 2 more birds. But the turning point really came when I got 2 hens off Alan Hindhoff, which were cousins to the Mean Machine, which was an exceptional bird in the Up North Combine, first combine, second combine, and 6 first feds. And these 2 hens, I said to Alan at the time, they're going to the distance race, these are going to Bourges. And these 2 hens, which were basically bush arts, turned in some tremendous Bourges performances, flying it 3 times on the day between them and 5 times on the combine sheet with 9s, 10s and 12s. And at that particular time, I also had a good blue cock going down through Herbie's, and I had a good hen going, which I called a Claremont hen, and another good hen, which I called a Melon hen. And I decided there and then, when these birds were 5-year-old, to take them off the road and use them as the basis for a family. Well, this little hen I find to be quite an impressive pigeon. She's a half-sister to the hen I won the combine with out of Bourges. Now, she went to the Channel once last year, and she had a very bad race, and she stayed out about 5 days from the last Lille. Now this year I sent her to Lille, which is 350 miles, and she was my last bird on the day in a very difficult race coming out of a batch of 12 at 9:10 at night in the rain. And I sent her back 2 weeks later to Bourges, and she was my first pigeon on the night. Then I sent her back 2 weeks later into Bourges, and she was my fourth pigeon home on the night. So this little hen has flown in excess of 1,200 miles in 6 weeks.
Yeah. How many young birds you breed each season in, Rod?
Well, normally, I mean, for myself, I would breed between 50 and 60 young birds, but I like all of my pigeons to rear a nest, so what I mostly do is breed off every round and give the surplus away to charity and sales. And in fact, this year there's more than 100 youngsters gone out to friends and to charity sales. And I breed them with the express purpose of having them experienced enough to fly Bourges when they're 2-year-olds. So in fact, my youngsters fly quite freely, and I train them as anybody else would train theirs, and I race them simply down to about 200 miles. I used to send to the national, because the national, I could have, I know it's daft, but I could have won a national position, so I used to get a clock set. But for many years now, I've not bothered even getting a clock set. I use this as a training for future old birds.
Yeah, education.
Because I've found at our young bird national in the north of England, the darkness system has taken off, and if you don't fly youngsters on the dark, you won't win. And if you want to win young bird races, you have to fly that system. And I'm not interested.
Yeah. What do you think of the system as in the long term?
Well, it's been in my area for about 5 years, and there isn't any doubt that they're very impressive. When you watch them racing, it's very impressive. I've never flown it because I'm interested in those birds as 2-year-olds, and I have a sneaking feeling that a lot of the top fanciers in the north of England who've been on darkness system are tending to come off it, and I have a sneaking feeling that there might be a price to pay. There's always a price to pay for whatever you do. You can't even force rhubarb without a price, and I think later in life something might happen.
This is the scene side Rod's second natural section. He runs his young birds with the old birds, and they're separated later on in the season. Rod's pigeons are kept very natural, and are allowed to nest anywhere, in nest boxes or on the floor. We're here in the cabin. I can't help noticing, Rod, that you keep your eggshells.
Yes, I'll show you too, Keith. It's the reason. There are two reasons for this. One reason is a physical reason, that if you have an egg in the nest that you particularly want that gets perforated by a pigeon's claw, the old fancier's method simply was to put a piece of sellotape or electrician's tape over the hole. Now that doesn't often work. The Belgian fanciers, one or two of them, what they do, they collect if you have an egg that has a hole in it, if you go and get another egg of the same shape that you don't want, cut this egg in half and just push one half over the other half. You don't need glue, and in fact that will seal, cover the hole, and with the eggshells being porous, the youngster can breathe through the eggshell, and you'll get a perfectly healthy youngster without risking losing it. But the major reason I keep them is for when I want to float. If you want to float a young bird under an existing pair, one of the defence mechanisms in the wild for wild birds, everybody's seen starlings' eggs and blackbirds' eggs hatch shells on the lawn. Well, these birds are aware, they know in inverted commas, that a nest is given away by the eggshells on the ground to predators like foxes and stoats, so the birds carry the eggs away, and you'll watch most pigeons will fly out with an eggshell. It's a reflex action, so if you want a bird to accept the foster youngster up to the age of nearly being feathered, if you throw the male or the female off the nest, put the youngster in the nest and leave the eggshells, the two eggshells beside that youngster, the very minute the cock or the hen picks up that shell and takes it out of the nest, you know they've accepted that youngster. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah,
it's very interesting, Rod. All right, Rod, I'd like to thank you very much for inviting me around to your loft today, mate. It's been a great honour. It's something I really look forward to.
It's my pleasure, Keith. It's been nice to meet you.
Rod Adams of South Shields.